Were Atlas one day to decide to rest and sustain, if only for a day, the burden of a small part of the world, choosing, as the Greeks of his time did, Sicily as his elected territory, he would then surely make Enna the center of the world. The province of Enna is situated in the exact center of Sicily, and is defined in turn the belly button of the island. It is also the only Sicilian province which does not give onto the sea, and therefore presents all the typical characteristics of an inland area. Controlling the landlocked but by no means marginal city of Enna and its territory has for centuries been key to assuring domination of the entire island. The Greeks, Carthaginians, Romans, Arabs, Normans, and even Garibaldi's 1,000 and later Patton's armored division have all had to deal with Enna before being able to adorn themselves with the title of conqueror. Its territory extends over 2,562 square kilometers, distributed among 20 townships, of which 16 are located in the hillside that makes up roughly 80% of the land surface, and the remaining 4 in mountainous zones, concentrated in the northern section and near the Maronia and Nebrodi areas. The only level territories are found along the border of the Catania area, in the townships of Catena Nuova and Centuripe. Rich in water and rolling hills, protected from cold northern winds by its chain of mountains, Enna's is a territory generous like few others. When once upon a time Sicily was called the grain basket of Italy, it was the Enna area. It is no coincidence that Ceres, goddess of the harvest, was thought to have her earthly abode here. Ceres' cry of "Run, run," with which she desperately tried to call back her daughter Proserpine, is still on the lips of the Enna women of today. Enna maintains an affectionate and motherly relationship with its history. It jealously preserves the many signs left by the various peoples and eras on its territory. But it also generously opens itself up to the curiosity of the more attentive traveler. The ancient Sicilians left the most important testaments of the island's distant past here. The Greek culture is well represented by the city and its splendid theater at Morgantina. The villa of the hamlet of Piazza Armerina is perhaps the greatest legacy handed down by the opulent Roman civilization of the imperial age. Towers and castles tell us of the bloody fights which Norman knights faced against Saracen troops in the Middle Ages. Palaces and sumptuous abodes still echo with the great feasts of the Aragonese domination, while the thirst for new things from the early 1900s is present in the Art Deco friezes on many city buildings. A scenario of entanglements and of the superimposing of eras makes up the DNA, the backbone of what Sicily means to us today. Here, everything is wrapped in the primitive stillness of the forests and woods, from the incessant murmur of the waters to the rapid beating of the wings of birds of prey. It is here, in fact, that man truly faces his past, with the tales of his history, a magical and uncontaminated nature suspended between heaven and earth. In certain ways, an exploratory voyage into the Enna territory therefore takes on the shape of a real journey back in time. More thrilling still and more surprising because so little known. From this stance, a good starting point would doubtless be Enna's Regional Archaeology Museum. In the Varisano Palace's great halls, life flows uninterrupted from prehistory to the Middle Ages along an unparalleled timeline. And perhaps for the first time, Greeks, Carthaginians, and Romans share here in the stillness of the museum places long and bloodily contested over the centuries, even if, to tell the truth, one needs only to close one's eyes to hear the clash of arms, which on the Cremiso and Atimera foiled Hannibal's ancestors' ambitions of conquest. Enna has, in fact, been a land of boundaries, an area where, at any given moment, one could always recognize with certainty a place on this side and one on the other side. Here the Greeks, over there the Phoenicians. Here the Romans, over there the Carthaginians. Here the Normans, there the Saracens. And on to the Spanish and the reign of the two Sicilies. The Castle of Lombardy, Federico II's Tower, and the Gothic Catalan towers of Enna, the Angevin fortress at Sperlinga, the walls of Aidone, Agira, and Assoro, the Saracen strongholds and Piazza Armerina, the Norman castles at Cerami and Nicosia, the dizzying heights of the fortifications carved into the living rock of Gagliano Castelferrato. Nonetheless, anyone who thinks these places are merely military outposts would be sorely mistaken. It is said that Enna's is a land devoted to the harvest, fertility, and nature, an aspect too important and vital not to be considered in its correct dimension. The place where this is most clear is probably the villa of the hamlet of Piazza Armerina, one of the most frequently visited archaeological sites on the island. It is peculiar that here, despite all the power of the Roman legions, one breathes in only the tranquility of a country residence. The mosaics portraying loves, hunts, banquets, and chariot races tell us of the leisure and pleasures of a rich and self-satisfied society like that of the Romans in the 4th century BC. And if Pompeii tells us of the empire's height of glory, here we have a snapshot of what was sure to have been its sunset. With the expanse of golden fields of grain and the incessant chirping of cicadas in summer, it isn't difficult to go back in time and imagine how the ancient owners of the villa chased away the ghosts of this decline. Wandering through the old neighborhoods of Nicosia, Leonforte, Cerami, and of Enna itself fully restores this human and intimate dimension of history. A dimension which grows more affectionate and loving when one stops to admire the medieval frescoes of the Cathedral of St. Nicholas in Nicosia. There on the wooden ceiling, as far as the eye can see, miniature figures unfold, figures which retell 1,000 stories taken from daily life. We are at the end of February. The air is still cold at night, and the mountains are still white with snow. Spring seems distant, far off in the future. This happens more or less everywhere in Sicily. Everywhere but here. This is a land blessed by the ancient divinities of the fields, a place where nature offers the best of herself. Thus, hills which until recently were bare are suddenly covered by a blanket of emerald green swaying in the wind. And the new wheat, already high, announces to all living things the promise of the sun. From an environmental point of view, the province of Enna is one of the most important provinces in Sicily. 7 regional natural reserves and various protected parks are found here. A patrimony of unequaled woods, ravines, waters, flora and fauna. The particular conformation of the territory and its geological history make Enna's environment a monument to biodiversity, which needs to be protected and preserved because it is so unique. Here, in fact, lie one of Sicily's rarely seen dimensions, made up of mountainous habitats, silences, and fresh air. It is here that the last strips of forests, dating back to the Ice Age, survive. A reflecting pool of lakes, rivers, and torrents, streams, and irrigation ditches. Such an abundance of water could only produce a flood of vegetation. A triumph of flowers, fruits, and berries which attract insects and butterflies of every kind, and with them, birds. That which is most striking is not so much the triumph of nature, but the relationship that has matured over the centuries between nature and human beings. Some of the most interesting green spots in the area, for example the Ronza Park near Piazza Armerina and the Oak Grove at Calascibetta, border residential centers. And this familiarity can in some way build a new starting point for other experiences. The strength and originality of the Enna province are without doubt easily discovered in the unbreakable bonds between its history, culture, environment, and traditions. Logically, this leads to a natural development of quality tourism, an objective which the provincial administration has been working on for some time, and which today can rely on new impulses and more systematic interventions. The historic center of Piazza Armerina is a fascinating area perfectly preserved. Gathered around the massive Duomo, the city plan follows the shape of the hill along whose slopes it develops. Besides numerous private buildings, which are today almost all abandoned, the historic center of Piazza Armerina distinguishes itself with a true flourish of often imposing civic and religious structures, like the Aragonese Castle, the Velardita and Starabba palaces, the former training college, and the Teatini convent. These structures are today part of the valorization plan of the community and the province, and thanks to private investments, could soon constitute the first nucleus of a newly conceived hotel complex for the tourists who each year come to visit the archaeological sites of the nearby Villa del Casale, Morgantina, and Centuripe, to name but a few. Rural and leisure tourism have, on the other hand, found their natural chosen terrain in two particular complexes. The first is in the Floristella and Grotta Calda area, near the most important and vast sulfur mines on the island, today closed and converted into a park. The buildings have been developed on an area covering over 257 hectares and constitute the annexes and head office of the mining installation. The area, as one can imagine, enjoys consistent geothermal phenomena, which, thanks to the abundance of watercourses and the vicinity of places of great artistic and archaeological interest, would permit Floristella Grotta Calda to become an important tourist center. The other complex is Borgo Cascino, near Enna. The buildings are part of a vista of extraordinary panoramic value, and which is in great part practically intact. The installation was born at the end of the 1930s as a rural colony, and the slow and quiet rhythms of the agricultural lifestyle are still quite evident. Further proof can be found among the proposed requalification projects for Borgo Cascino, which include bringing back to life through a new center dedicated to local artisan work the productive soul of the area. The vivacity and propensity towards developing the Enna territory doesn't stop at the exploitation of existing resources. This area evokes many images, even in the most unlikely of places. This is the case of the Pergusa racetrack and of plans to build at Regalbuto, along the shores of Lake Pozzillo, the biggest theme park in Europe after Disneyland. The idea is to develop the tourist aspect through various means, priming the way for economic growth on different fronts. Within the city of Enna's coat of arms stands a symbol which offers more than just a promise, a two-headed eagle. It once flew above the city to warn those who had in mind the conquest of Enna that it would be a dangerous task, in no way easy or without difficulty, just as attempting to reach an eagle's nest would be. Enna still wants to look far ahead and fly high, and this pride is still very present today, but it is accompanied by something new. One of the eagle's heads looks in fact to the future, at the extraordinary opportunities for growth and development which lie ahead. The other looks back on its past, on what has made Enna the Enna we know today, and which will make it what it will be tomorrow. Because if there is one thing which Enna claims with pride, it is its roots. Its origins as a land favored by the gods lose themselves in the dawn of time.